Hi, this is Greg Hildebrandt. I've been a professional artist for 62 years. I've done a lot of artwork in that time, and I'm still just trying to get it right.
I'm
Here we
here.
are.
Yeah, there we go.
Sorry, everyone.
Bada boom. Two technicians were walking down the street. This ain't one of them.
Hey, you know what? We're not a professional broadcasting crew just yet. So
Maybe some.
we'll
Oops.
get there. We'll get there eventually. David Bunn says hi, Greg.
Hi, David. How are you?
So, Mr. Hildebrand, how are you today, sir?
All right. I mean, pretty much the same as last week, more or less, kind of. You know.
Well,
Finally,
are you
except
good?
this thing's moving along a little bit now. As you can see, it's been up here. What 3 weeks ago? I think we had. It's very time consuming. This kind of you don't get.
I would imagine so. I would imagine all the
You're
perspective
Yeah,
and
you're constantly measuring. You have a plumb. I have a plumb line over there in a horizontal and a vertical. And I'm constantly measuring with an L square to make sure lines are all horizontal and vertical. Because as you paint, it's all freehand. I'm not using guides or anything. Because that's my choice. I don't want it to look like a photograph. It should look like a painting, which it is. So anyway, it takes time. That's it. It's like a commitment you make. It's like not the most it's not like painting girls or monsters, but it's got its own challenges, you know.
that might be. It's a different kind of challenge, but a challenge nonetheless to get. I mean, it's starting to look like I said, a matte painting behind you. I mean,
Yeah,
it almost looks like you're sitting in their yard.
yeah, I mean
Yeah.
it's interesting because I mean my normal application of my color theory from highlight to shadow, I use a certain range of colors that did not apply to this at all, given the fact that the house is primarily in shadow and there's edge light sun. That if I was use my normal color breakdown, all this frontal shadow, this whole area would have gone to blue. And
Okay.
therefore, if you're painting that sort of, you're outside, you want to capture that realism of light, that
Yeah.
sense of it doesn't, it wouldn't portray the actual color of the house, which I
Hmm.
think my choice to, not that I even discussed it with them, but my choice to keep the color of the house accurate to the owners of the house, so that then when they see the painting, they instantly see it. Well, yes, that's correct.
That's the color. Yeah,
Yeah, that's
that makes sense.
so you kind of like you adjust. It's like adjusting, chroma and color. Anyway,
Okay.
whatever.
But yeah, I mean, it really is looking fantastic. Like I could see the mailman like walking up and delivering his package on the doorstep right now.
Yeah.
Green screen looks like a green screen back there. And oh, sorry, I said it was David Bunn because that's the name coming up, but he chimed in and said it's actually Steve Bunn that's
Steve.
watching and saying hello.
Yes. Hi, Steve. Long time.
So
Steve.
as we're moving on, do you have a quote for us today, ma'am?
Let me see. Well, what's our subject again? What's the
We
top?
were talking. We were going to talk about the shifting value of aesthetics and how
Yeah,
that relates to comics and art and collectibles.
all kinds of stuff. I mean, but the man I used to work for, Fulton J. Sheen, I always like this quote. I think it kind of applies. If you marry the spirit of one age, you will be a widow in the next. I think it kind of right. You know what I mean?
It
Sort of.
does. Yeah, we'll have to.
If you become
I'll have to ponder that one a little bit.
yeah,
Yeah, but
but shifting change in taste. I don't know. Is it like primarily a generational thing? You think? Each generation has to have its own shtick. So they have their own music, they have their own clothes, they have their own hairdos, right? And so, in other words, your parents did this and this. I'm not going to do that. I've got to get my own thing. Their parents, your parents, did the same thing to their parents, on and on and on and on through time. Is that play a part of it? I don't know.
Yeah. Now, if we're talking specifically about like just aesthetics as in the of style, of fashion, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's I guess a sense of rebellion that that goes in, but everything's kind of cyclical, right? Like when in the 90s, like when I was in high school, there was the grunge era, but at the same time, the 60s was seeing a resurgence. People were starting to wear tie dye again, and
Bell bottoms.
a new wave hippie movement, was coming through. And I think now, and I'm not a fashion person at all, so I could be talking like a total idiot right now and not even know it.
Well, I mean,
But
we're not. We look at it. We're not
yeah,
historians, and we're not experts in that. I mean, we have a conversation. That's what this is.
but it seems as if there's an element of the 90s that's coming back now. you
Yeah,
know so there's that 30-year gap of time that brings these cyclical things in, and even to a degree in art styles or things that may have been popular, or comic book storylines that were popular in that time are now seeing a certain resurgence and showing up in the Marvel movies
yep.
and things like that. But one aspect that when we were talking about this earlier, and is like, well, what gives art its value? Like, who values the art, and
Yeah, and why?
what makes yeah
Yeah,
and
who
and
and why?
why?
And value it meaning there's two ways, right? Valuing it as economically speaking, and or appreciating what's there. Just grasping
Yes.
and seeing it or hearing it. Yeah, and yeah. Uh, and that's a shifting thing. That conversation, I've been into shifts. I've been at this a long time, obviously, and I mean I've shifted all through my whole so-called professional career, which started at
Yeah.
18, and I'm 82. So I was very much personally into Disney. Still am. Early Disney was the stuff that I grew up on. The first stuff, and but when UPA came along, I got into that.
What's UPA?
uh, Magoo, Gerald McBoing Boing. That's the era, the beginning of not 3D animation. That is to say, people moving in and out of perspective towards you and away from you, and
Okay.
round and squash and stretch, and all the stuff that forms that kind of so-called classic animation that not only Disney did but Warner Brothers did, and all of them back in that era. But UPA starts with flat 2D animation that basically moves horizontal and vertical, and the
Okay.
characters are very stylistic and sharp edged and so-called modernistic in the day. And I was into that when I was working at the Jam Handy organization. I was the industrial film producer in Detroit at 18, 19, 20, 21, 22. I was starting to take that on. They were in the studio starting to take that look on. And but I mean the thing is, I think people I remember people back then totally abandoning the 3D rounded full animation thing, Disney, because I still loved it. Both of them were not. I didn't have to choose one or the other.
Yeah.
People were in a conversation that you had to pick one or the other again. It's that extreme thing. You know what I mean? That binary thing is, which is insane to me. I could appreciate this. I could appreciate that. You know. So
Yeah.
I mean, I got into the one thing, say UPA style. I put the Disney thing, you know, on a shelf. Just put it aside for a while, not abandon it.
Now, now, when you say you're getting into it, is that just from a completely observational, appreciational standpoint, or are you incorporating this into your work at the
Oh,
time?
totally doing the work that way. I have lots of samples of that stuff still that I saved from that time frame. Yeah, no,
Okay.
I was applying it to all kinds of things. You know, it's so yeah, I was coming out of that whole thing with Disney, Norman Rockwell, the great illustrators, but I was still
Hmm.
now you start to look at the new illustrators, and everything was flattening out. Even the realistic people in the magazines, there was not rendering; it was almost patterns and juxtapositions of values and shapes, which is beautiful. All
Yeah.
very very Asian, Japanese, you know, and in a way. And then I totally got into that. I mean, I tried to emulate that kind of work. And like I say, though, I never put the 3D thing aside. That was always I'd be back and forth. In my mind, I'm still in that, you know. So I think, yeah, shifting. Again, I think the idea that you don't have to abandon one thing completely to take on a new thing. I mean, it's an assemblage of all kinds of things that goes together, you know.
No, one thing with talking about this, styles, right? That's the value of aesthetic, and what we're talking about with like artistic styles and how they change uh, to a degree generationally. Something like Disney influenced the Japanese pop art, which then grew into uh, crazy levels of popularity, which then comes back over and influences the art that's being created here. And at that same time, there was the fantasy art that that you were doing in the 70s and through the 80s. Like guys, like you and Boris and Frazetta and different people uh, that then influenced another generation, kind of went away for a little bit, but then is making its comeback through, the early Magic the Gathering stuff, and even more than what they're doing now, and in the video game world.
Yeah.
So we're seeing a very unique juxtaposition of that classic fantasy illustration that you and your contemporaries really started, uh, and then it being manifested, but in a new modern kind of what through with when I say a modern way, meaning very often digitally rendered,
Yeah.
you know, of where you could get to the ultra complex cityscapes and landscapes and all that.
This stuff is
Uh,
amazing. It's fantastic.
yeah, it looks
I don't
it looks
do it,
great.
but I mean, I appreciate it. You know,
Well, yeah, I mean, but you're doing what they're doing live.
in the old
You're doing
fashioned.
in real world, you know. So, which that brings up an interesting, you know, point of trying to get some kind of cohesion here of the shifting styles and how technology has played a huge role in adding complexity to style,
Hmm.
right? But at the same time, it exists primarily in a virtual world. It exists in a computer, and the only way to get uh, something of an appreciable value, right, for the consumer that is not in a video game or not consumed through a screen is through a print, right?
Yeah.
So we're now looking at um, an art collecting world of where actual traditional paintings are here, and then over here we're seeing only replication
Right.
of it, through a
Hmm.
inkjet printer or whatever kind of
Yeah.
printer they're using at this point. Um, so what I wanted to ask is when you're setting out for these, when you're doing paintings and you're doing jobs, are you considering future value uh, at all? Does that question make sense?
Yeah. Well, I don't. Gene does.
Gene does. Okay, yeah. So okay,
I'm
that
only
makes
thinking
sense.
of this.
You're
I just
you're
think
completely
about
involved in the creative process.
completely one 1,000,000%. That's the only thing I'm thinking about is
Now,
getting. You know, I don't think about value at
do you
all.
ever, so, but do you ever think about in terms of
It seems as though you've disappeared again. Keith has kind of gone away.
I already answered his question.
What's that? And Gene's walking over.
Greg, just answer his question.
The question.
I don't remember.
Well, I've already answered the question. Do I think about value in terms of economic? I assume economic value. No, I don't. I said Gene does. I said I strictly do this. Gene, he asked, do I think about value when I'm working on something?
Are you talking about the monetary value?
Monetary value. I don't never think of that. You think of that. I said to him. That was the answer to my question. And basically, that's it. I mean, my concern is getting the painting, the drawing correct, to the satisfaction of, if it's for me, and then the next thing, if it's for a client, whether it be private or personal or a company, then it's satisfying the needs and demands and the requests of the client, and that's what I'm thinking about.
Okay, so when you start a painting, do you know how long it's going to take you? Do you have any idea how long it's going to take you?
Well, you've been keeping a calendar on me for what, since 1979, so you can kind of more project how long it's going to take me. So you mark that down and you keep a calendar, and we're clocking it. So yeah, there's a way that you can estimate it. Sometimes the estimate is not entirely accurate, but it's pretty close. Pretty close. Like
how many shingles are on that house?
Yeah, you probably can't see them on the video, but there's all these lines. This is shingled. What is it? What's the substance?
Cedar, I believe.
Cedar shakes, basically, and I have to render all those. So that's just beginning.
You back, Keith?
Keith, did you return?
I have returned, Greg.
We were talking about that last question you asked about, do I think of value? And Gene stepped in, so we had a little conversation about that. And
I was talking about estimating, Keith, how long something's going to take, because that's part of how you value. It's about the
Yes.
time put in, and I was saying that you can't always get that right. For example, the painting behind him, if you count the amount of shingles on the outside of that house, you'll know how far off I was.
So yeah, the thing is, this is probably going on a week, maybe 2 weeks longer than you thought.
It'll be 2 weeks longer.
So it's just,
so it'll be 5 weeks, this painting.
But wait a minute. All right. Anyway, so here we are again.
So, okay. So my question was not necessarily setting up the value for that which was a private commission, right?
Yep.
Yeah, but like if you're doing a job, say for Marvel.
Mm-hmm.
Now I know that you put everything into every job just out of the desire. You come from the mentality you're only as good as your last job, and you have to do a great job in order to get the next one.
Yeah, that's.
But within that, do you think about, okay, I know that for the reproduction of this, I might not necessarily need this much visual information, but in order to increase the secondary market sale of the painting, I'm going to add more. Do you think in those terms at all?
Sometimes no. Well, detail. People, a lot of the times, I find it interesting. People look at one of my paintings and say, "Oh my God, that's so detailed," and I say, "That's not detailed. Take a look at this, Andrew Wyeth. That's detail." So I mean, detail, that becomes a kind of a loose term that I'm not sure of, And I'm always struggling. It's the old the Bob Seger lyric, what to leave in, what to leave out. You're always struggling with this. How much should I? And that's not so much out of economic reasons or time reasons. That's just style. How are you
Yeah.
approaching this? I do approach like I think I try to. I don't say I succeed when I do say comic stuff, Marvel or whoever, Dynamite. More of a different approach, like I did the Marvel masterpieces with Tim. There's a
Hmm.
conscious effort to be not detailed, but more comic booky looking. Do you
Okay.
know? And that's an effort to do that. So I mean, if I had more time to spend on it, I don't think there would be no shift in that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's. But then again, coming back to this business about style and shifting tastes, which is to me something that I've been aware of probably not as a kid. You don't think about that stuff. You're obsessed with what you're obsessed with as a kid. And maybe, by the time I got into my teens, 20s, well, I was working at the Jam Handy organization where if I started to draw a rounded 3D picture, for animation for the job or what the hell it was we were working on, I'd get from the more modernist guy who I loved. He was fantastic and a great artist. He'd say, "What are you doing? Making a Mickey Mouse?" Making a Mickey Mouse meant it was 3D rounded and all that stuff, and not just the philosophical aspects of the character, but the style of the actual drawing and animation. And and
Yeah.
so there would always be this kind of struggle or effort or thing there. And but I think the problem is that with that, I think the Bishop Sheen thing is where people get so connected to something new that pops up that everything else is crap. They don't like this, and they get stuck in that time frame. You know what I'm saying? I think. And the trick for an artist, I think, is to is I don't know what maybe is to keep shifting or something. Not that
Yeah.
you're throwing stuff away. Again, like I say, you're just adding stuff on. I'm not sure. I'm not being clear. I know what I'm
I,
speaking.
I think I got what you mean. And I think there's two main principles that you're talking about is that you don't throw away your foundation, right? Because that's what everything's built on, so you don't throw everything away, the stuff that came from your past, the stuff that influenced you, but you also have to evolve and adapt to stay current.
Absolutely.
All right.
A lot of
But
a
if
lot of that
you
a lot of that is strictly the subject matter itself, not so much the style of drawing or painting. I think
Yeah.
because I'm not sitting here. I don't consciously try to paint any different. I was I was very conscious as a young guy, like I say, man, at Jam Handies when I was taking on different things. Because when you're young as an artist, I think you probably went through it, right? I've got to come up with my own style. People would kind of like tell
Yes.
you that. What's your style? You've got to come so that you stand out. Well, that's not something you can invent on the spot. That's something that
Exactly.
emerges after it emerges. But I mean, back then, coming up with your own style, I mean, that meant kind of like looking at other people's work and emulating it. Because I remember Bernie Fuchs, and I think he's one of the greatest of that time frame. He was freaking incredible. He was hot. I mean, he was the number one guy back in the '60s, early '60s, and that's in the young, artists were emulating. I was, and other young guys.
Well, in what medium was, or what field of art was he working in?
Illustration, a lot of advertising, and
So we-
a lot of advertising and magazine illustration, and he had a very realistic drawing. The setup, everything was very, everything was there. But his method of painting was underpainting and overpainting, and his color, which was derived from truth to nature, like the impressionist so-called approach, you know,
Mhm.
so-called impressionist, but yet very stylistic in his application of paint and drawing and line feeling. He still
Okay.
is King Kong to me from that period. And so I got into that, and I tried to emulate that. As a matter of fact, I consciously tried to effort to try to several paintings that I did. I still have. In fact, when he died, I had Gene put up my painting that I had done years before, sort of like emulating his style. Whether I'm not saying that I ever achieved anything close to it, but that was clear that I was trying to move in that direction, you know. And I take that on for a while, and then it gets part of your system, you know. I don't know where it goes somewhere into your whole way of being and working and everything, you know. But that's a anyway, whatever.
Well, it's
I digress.
yeah. Well, it's an evolution and an adaptation, and uh, a great quote regarding artistic styles from Joe Kubert, who always just said, style is just a series of mistakes that you make consistently. you know?
Yeah, I like that. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's pretty cool.
You're not drawing everything perfectly accurate to realism.
Right.
So it's like, okay, yeah, it absolutely makes sense from a certain thing. But so where do you think this then the value of the purchasing of art, uh, particularly in our field of illustration, comic books, and things like that? I'm not talking like the fine art world,
Mm-hmm.
because we know that value is set by the gallery owners, right?
Yeah.
But where in the commercial art field, the value of something is set not by a third party participant, who just makes a statement, this is of value and here's what it is. In my opinion, it's really set by the fans of the work.
You mean
Am I making sense with that?
okay? I'm kind of like confused. You mean the actual sale of the piece after it's been done for the client?
Okay, yeah.
Because I mean, the client,
In a
that
couple different.
Marvel or DC will set you, or Dynamite or whoever you're working for.
Okay, no. They're setting the value to you as the artist. Like, here's the value for the job,
Right.
right? Like, this is what I'm going to pay you for
This
the
is what I'm
job.
paying. Take it or leave it.
But that's the value of the material afterwards.
Mhm.
Like who
That
says that this comic book is going to be popular, or worth money tomorrow,
mhm.
or the they're the artists in those early comic books, or even there's a certain percentage, that an average median that people are getting paid to do those books,
Right.
right? And then in the aftermarket,
Right. Uh-huh.
depending on who the character is or whatever, those pages are going to sell for.
Yeah, the character, the fame of the artist. Fame has a lot to do with it. The name that is, of the artist. How big, how widespread and well known is that name? That has a lot to do with it. An unknown artist that has got a reputation, people aren't going to value it that highly because they're unknown. I mean, that's got a lot to do with it. Knowing who the artist is, and if that fame comes, that fame came to Tim and me by the Lord of the Rings, because I done so much work in the field of animation and general illustration and documentary filmmaking that had no value to the resale of the artwork that I had done, nothing at all, and until the Lord of the Rings, then value starts. That value. Why? Because the Rings is totally famous globally, and Tim and I illustrated it to a large amount of people's satisfaction, and and that there a value, a higher value now is created. The possibility of higher value is created, because of the subject and fame, of the artist. So that's got a.
And
I mean, some
so
artists get famous. They're so famous. All I got to do is just spit on the paper and sell that, right? We won't have to go into who they are, but
yeah. um, so so there was a couple things that you said that set value. That one is fame, right?
yeah.
And the property or the subject that is happening. Now, do you think that in our field, right, that it's important for an artist to work on a highly visible property in order to get that fame. Like, you said for you and Tim, you were working on the rings, and the rings was already pretty darn popular, right?
I don't. That's one way out. The other way, I mean, you if you come up with your own thing and it hits in the moment and it sells, well, there you've created that. You know, Charles Schultz and Peanuts. And
Yeah.
whoever, name somebody.
Calvin and Hobbes,
Yeah,
Gary Larson, the
it's
Parker.
there's many of them. They create their own thing. And that's a whole different world. That's yeah, that's there's more value to that. I mean, the fame comes from their own creation. That's the you know, my fame primarily has come from other people's creations, and I moved in on it and it wasn't like I was looking for fame. I never looked for any of that. I never looked for money or never looked for fame. I wanted to make a living for sure at what I did, but that wasn't the driving motivating force. I took on the rings because when Tim and I both loved the story, and it was very illustratable, and we had grown up, admiring and appreciating fantasy since we were kids. Fantasy, works of
Yeah.
imagination. It could be anything, all kinds of things. And then consequently, I was shocked and amazed when fan letters started coming in, and I was like 40 years old almost by that point. And it's an amazing thing. All of a sudden, you're holy mackerel. People are really. It's the first time that we had any popular reaction to our work, from the people. Other than that, you're taking jobs into the publishers and advertising agencies, and it satisfies them. Okay, thanks a lot. Yeah, that works. Yes, yeah, and then they pay you eventually. Some of them took a year to pay, and and that's that your fame, our fame. Yes, there was a degree of fame that we both had in New York City, in between publishers and advertising agencies. Your name got around because it's basically a small business.
Yeah.
And what you're in art directors all know art directors. They belong to the Illustrator Society, and they all talk, and so we had a fame there. That is, we finished the job on time. We did it to their satisfaction, and a lot of times beyond their satisfaction, and we were not temperamental. We didn't, everything was, according to Hoyle, it was by the book, and we produced what we needed to produce. The main thing was we always met the deadlines. So that fame was there in a tighter circle. But the popular thing didn't start till the rings. And then when we did that Star Wars poster, that brought it up to another level of fame, But again, those are other people's things. I got a smaller degree of fame for my own Ursharok, my own novel with my brother and my friend Jerry Nichols, and Ian Summers. But that didn't expand to any great degree. You know what I'm saying? It's still kind of there. But it isn't anything that I think people are that aware of at all. So it's always comes back to the rings or Star Wars poster, one painting, which is kind of disconcerting in a way, given the fact of how much stuff I've done. I think you froze again. I think I'm talking to. Uh, huh? Just keep talking. But yeah, fame is got a lot to do with the value of people valuing something. And finally, it could even be that the work itself. What you do?
Keep going.
The work itself may not be of any greater quality or value, greater quality than something you did before you got famous. But now the fact that you're famous creates the value, even though the work itself may not be necessarily anything greater than, like I say, when before you became famous. So that's a whole thing going on there, right, Gene?
Yeah, but are you two talking about money? Because I wasn't watching. And
Yeah,
I wasn't
yeah.
listening.
That's got to do with money. That value, yeah. That, like I say, fame. I'm saying fame has got a lot to do with valuing a piece of artwork. as a very well-known artist, and as opposed to an artist who's completely unknown. That isn't always true. That's not just across the board.
Right, that's not always true. It's not just across the board. But it also has to do, I think, a lot with time. An artist's time is very valuable. And so if someone wants an extremely complex piece of art, then they're going to have to pay more for it if it's a
Oh, right.
commission.
That's
So
yeah.
whether it's, a job for marble, or whether it's a job for, a customer, wants a painting of his house, or wants a painting of his car or his horse, I mean, you have to take that into consideration when you're actually trying to come up with a price for someone on a piece of art.
Right. That's
Hi, Keith. Are you back?
yes, he is.
I am back, and I actually I could hear you the whole time. So I'm
Oh, could
freezing
you?
on your side, but I'm watching you. So sorry to jump back to where we were in the conversation, because
Please
I
do.
was going to make a point with you, Greg, is that maybe initially when you're coming off the fame of Rings and Star Wars, and then that maybe led you into some of the stuff with Marvel, you know, those, because the people were familiar with that type of work, and in
Yeah,
the
the name.
Shadows of the
Yeah.
Empire stuff and all that. But you've also set up a completely almost separate career um, with your pinup stuff
Yeah.
that probably had no the people that were interested in that and that starting to show that and starting to buy it probably had very little experience with your work from Rings or Star Wars. They might maybe a cursory knowledge of it, but I don't know that it's the same collector.
No, it's not. I mean, it's completely different people, and that's the thing too. Is like as an artist, it's aside from survival sake, you don't specialize. That's my belief. You know,
Yeah.
but that's not just only survival. That's because I'm interested in a lot of stuff, and I like to do all kinds of things, and I don't want to specialize. But yeah, you're right. Once because people pin up, what? Why? I thought you did hobbits.
Yeah.
There's this categorization thing that people have too, right? Everything has to be compartmentalized and put on a shelf, like a can of soup. Ah, you're a this. Oh, you're a that. And I don't, I don't like that kind of
Well,
classification.
yeah. Well, it's easier to compartmentalize things, but um, with one thing, we're talking about the fame, right? And how the fame then drives up the secondary market of your work. Now, whether you're selling that yourself as an artist, or if a dealer has bought it and they're selling it, and again, whether it's a comic book or a painting or a print, right? Um, that's the one thing that I've seen that you've been able to accomplish. Um, I guess from you're saying fame, but also there's also a quality to it. You can be very famous and lousy.
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. That's true. Yeah. The thing is, no, but it's not. Like, we're gonna go back and add to this. Like, yeah, the fame is there, but that fame can disappear and be gone with the wind. You know what I mean? It can
Yeah.
it can go away. I mean, so since when Gene and I started working, when 1979, that she took that on to me on, and my brother then, and then just me. Tim went his own way to
Yep.
continually keep my name out in front of the public, out in the world, out in front of potential client, new people. Look for new outlets all over the place constantly, and kicking my butt to make sure that I was, moving into the white space, the unknown territory, to keep, just to stay alive as an artist and to find out new things. So that's got to be worked at. I mean, you can be famous as hell. I mean, how many famous artists were there in their time frames that are completely gone now? Nobody knows who the hell they are. A
Yeah.
handful of them survive. You know, a
Yeah.
handful, literally over the hundreds and hundreds of thousands of artists through time, millions of artists through time. Right? Only a few of
Yep.
them by, you know, their names are here in the value, in their value. You know.
Well, I want to, with we're talking about like the with with the fame comes the increase in in the value, right? So I mean, you might have some young artists that are out there that are making some really good stuff
Yeah.
that, because they're not their art isn't necessarily selling for a large amount of money yet.
Hmm.
So you can get some quality art at a deal, so
Hmm.
to speak. But then you do have, people like you who are, you have a level of flame. You're going to command a certain dollar for your originals, right? So, what we were talking about with prints and stuff before, I admire what you guys have been able to do with, like, okay, you know what? You've always been an artist about the fans. You want to beat the fans. You like to talk to the fans. We're doing this because you like to have some kind of engagement with your fan base. But the average fan isn't necessarily going to be able to pay for one of your original art pieces, one of your paintings. But I admire the way that you and Gene have then said, okay, well, how can we get this out so that people can actually afford it, and you've done that with, putting the pinups onto the 10 signs, the ring stuff is onto these 10 signs. You put out calendars every year that people consume. You even offer photo prints and stuff of your work, just so you're like, look, I'm not going to sell an original painting for, $35.
Right.
However, you
You
can
can
get a
get this.
really high end reproduction of my stuff.
But I mean,
And
also also aside from the reproduction stuff, tin signs or giclées on canvas or whatever, original art too. I mean, our whole effort and belief is that we should make art for everybody. I mean, that original art that they can own and possess, and that's So I constantly do sketches and drawings and renderings, and Gene values them to keep them at a level that almost anybody can buy. You know what I mean? Anybody. You don't have to be a millionaire. You can be a working
You don't have
person.
to be close to a millionaire.
You don't have to be close to it. You can be a regular guy, and you just and it's all there. And Gene will work it out. Like, I mean, take commissions from me, and work it out with the buyer or the customer to make it doable for them and bring it and make it all work for them. And it's
yeah,
not billions of dollars. So I'm a firm believer in that.
and to me, there's a balance of ego that's going on to be able to do that, because I've seen a lot of artists that once they hit a certain level, you know,
Yeah.
they don't want to bother with anything that, I only do this. I'm only selling my stuff for this much money. I can't be bothered to do anything for the common person or maybe the person who doesn't have the resources to invest 20,000 into a painting. They don't want to bother. But again, it is something I admire
Yeah. Well, it's their
about
loss.
both you and Gene
It's their
of
loss.
making
You know.
a.
Come on.
Let's say, it's a balancing of, like I said, the ego of where you're like, yeah, you have a certain level of artistic fame, but
It's
you're willing to say, you know
ego.
what? No, I want to interact with people.
I mean, it's like, I don't know how the hell to phrase it. I mean, my mind's running
What do
around.
I say about ego?
What Gene says. What do I say about ego? What do you say?
Well, 41 years. 41 years, I've been
What?
telling you that you leave the ego at the door
Yeah.
or you don't work with
Well,
me.
I mean, the thing is, that you don't leave the
You
ego
don't
at the
work
door.
with me.
You don't work with Gene. But I mean, as far as I'm concerned, it's like, do you run your ego, or does it run you?
Yeah. Well,
You know what I mean? Besides, what the ego got to do, that's a good word, but hell, I mean, I enjoy drawing and I just like sketching and I like the fact that somebody can buy it for $10, or whatever.
Keith, I want to jump in here on something, if you don't
yeah,
mind,
please do.
even though
No, please.
I'm not in your image here, which is fine. But one of the things we started doing, and you know this because I do it with your art as well, a few years back, we started selling rough sketches at the conventions. They start at $20. They're signed
Yeah.
by the artist, they're original drawings, You know, there are various degrees. Maybe the most expensive sketch I'll have at a show is going to be $250, $300, and that's pretty finished. And at the same time, you know, one of the things I have said to every artist that I have ever worked with, to your point, is you can't work with me if you have an ego. You have to trust my judgment. And there's been many times at a show where a family will walk up to us and you'll have a little kid staring at the art and you can just see that they're in love. They're in heaven. This is like the best stuff they've ever seen. And you look at them and you know, or at least I know, that they can't afford any of it. That they've spent as much money as they have to get in the door, to buy a hamburger, to get some French fries for the kids, and maybe a Coke for mom and dad. And I hand them a sketch. That's not a $300 sketch. Maybe it's a $50 sketch. And I ask them their name and I ask them their age, and Greg signs it and signs it to Jimmy or Kathy or Petey or whoever it happens to be, and we give it to them. Because that's what art's about. You're supposed to share it. You're supposed to give it to people one way or the other.
I don't want to hoard it. I'm not a hoarder in that sense, you know. I mean, it's like it should be, you know what I mean? If people want to see it, I mean, they should see it. And if they want to have it, they should have it, you know. It's, to me, I don't get the whole concept that, you know, well, my shit don't stink. So therefore you got to pay me hundreds of thousands of dollars because I'm, oh, you know what I mean? It doesn't make any sense to me.
I think what he's trying to say, Keith, is if you value his work and you value his capability as an artist and you value his time, then pay him what he thinks his art is worth. And if you don't want to pay that much or that price, or you can't, then possibly we can find something that he can do for you in a lesser amount of money, and or not, but we want people to be happy. We want people to love the art that they take home. So whether they're spending $20 for a print, or they're spending $25 for a book, or $150 for a book with a remark in it, you know, that it's an original sketch as well. And it's important to us. It's way more important to me, I will tell you, than it is to Greg from a legacy standpoint, because I want people to still love his art after he and I are both gone. That's important to me.
And, you know, I mean, I approach everything I do, we talked about this before, with great enthusiasm, no matter if it's a little sketch for a kid who might want it, or a big painting for somebody, that there's no, you know, like holding back on anything. And I'm as turned on by getting a commission. Like, can we talk about the commissions? Like the one I just got?
Yeah.
I'm totally thrilled. There's a collector, he's hired me he wants a painting of Godzilla
With
Tiamat, battling Tiamat from Dungeons and Dragons, a 5-headed dragon. I said, oh, God. I was thrilled. I'm totally overjoyed to be painting this picture. I mean, it's a thrill for me. It started off as a blackboard with color. It's, you know, some color. Now it's moved up to a painting. I'm the one that suggested the painting. And then in that, it's like I'm totally turned on to this thing. And it's just, yeah, Keith disappeared. Now he's back.
He's back?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I heard.
Yes, I heard all the way through, you know, talking about the importance of it from the legacy standpoint.
Oh, she didn't hear about the Godzilla?
No, if you just talked about Godzilla, no, I did not hear about Godzilla.
Yeah.
Well, Godzilla, I just got a client, you know, he wants Godzilla fighting Tiamat, which is a 5-headed dragon from Dungeons and Dragons. I'm a kid in my bedroom. I'm so thrilled to do this picture. And it hits me, goddamn, I've never drawn Godzilla before. I've been a fan, of course, since 1954, the very first movie.
He's watched every movie.
I've gone I go see those Toho films in the theater, man. I mean, those guys were maniacs. The miniature sets that they built. I remember Rodin, the flying monster, flapping his wings and all the shingles, every individual shingle on the roofs of these houses that they started all blowing all off, not in big clumps, but you could see the design, the builders of that stuff. So I was always hung about miniatures anyway, and I appreciate that stuff immensely. So for me, painting Godzilla is like going back to 1954. You know, it's really cool.
That's awesome.
Boys, can you give me that water there, huh?
Yeah. Okay.
You know, so talking about, with 1954 and Godzilla, and that was the other element that we had talked about with this topic of is the value in the collectibles market, right? Because this kind of came up. We were last week. You were in your room and you had all your stuff from
Yeah.
your childhood, and we've seen so not only the stuff that you purchase for your collectibles and things like that, but stuff that you have actually done is now considered a collectible.
Yeah, that's a weird.
Well,
That's weird. That's
Keith,
weird. I mean, it's like you don't get
Keith,
that. You know, that doesn't go clunk.
one of the things, what was it, yesterday or today? You and I were talking about what do we collect, and you said, "What is it you collect?"
I collect action figures.
From
Masters of the Universe.
Masters of the Universe, right? Okay, so you have a whole wall of Masters of the Universe, right? And that's from your childhood, or is that from your adulthood?
Now it's both, because I loved it when I was a kid. I loved Conan and He-Man and all of the barbarian stuff.
Yeah.
And this goes then to the conversation that you and Greg and I were having the other day about nostalgia. Okay,
Nostalgia.
So for example, when I finalized that commission yesterday, and the gentleman sent me a deposit, and I said to Greg, okay, I have a deposit, so I'm putting it on your work board. The very first thing out of his mouth was what? Okay, go online and find me a Godzilla. And he bought $100 Godzilla. I mean, he's 82 years old, and he bought $100 Godzilla.
Any excuse to get
excuse.
The guy, and it's a cool thing, but he's hired many artists to do Godzilla, which is like amazing. I only saw one that Gene showed me. It's a watercolor, is beautiful. And he has these ideas. He then hires artists to do, like the one that Gene showed me was Godzilla having tea with the Jabberwocky, which is really cute. I mean, it's fantastic. But that's the kind of stuff that and I just love that. I think that's incredible. I think that's being more creative and imaginative. That's the collector himself being very, very creative and imaginative with coming up with his concepts and then hiring people to do it,
But Keith, one of the things that I think is important for any artist, and I've said this for 41 years, has nothing to do with age or fame. One of the things that's key is when I get somebody a job, any job, they've got to want to do it.
Yeah.
If they don't like it, if it's not going to be a challenge, if it's not going to turn them on, if there isn't a reason that they do this, then I don't take that job for that artist, because it's not going to be the best it can be, because they just don't have the energy behind it. I mean, Greg has never done a house. He's never done a house.
I've not. I mean, I've done
No.
houses in scenes
I mean a house.
I
mean a house as a commission.
Yeah, right.
For someone to paint
that's
a
the
house.
main thing.
That's the main thing. He's never done that. But the people who built this house are dear friends of ours. We adore them both. They spent 3 years meticulously building this magnificent home, and then they said, "Would Greg paint it?" And it's like a cool honor.
Well, not only that, but I mean, the contractor hired to do this was Richie Horak. Now, his father, Dickie Horak, was the contractor that Gene had discovered and worked on our house in the blizzard of '96. Coincidentally, we just had the one that equals the blizzard of '96 here.
Yeah.
Gene, this old house, 1894, one of the ceilings caved in, and so Dickie was here. So we got a whole history of
it's like full circle
of the men and women who worked on this house. So it's kind of, what I mean? There's a personal connection to the whole thing.
But you're turned on by it is the point.
I'm turned on by it, all that, plus the house. I mean, this is a historic house on this lake. that they reconstructed, you know. So it's really cool. It's just fun.
Well, I found it fascinating that at 82 though, uh, you're still learning in the craft, you know, because you said, you know, your typical color scheme and or light and shadow scheme, however you phrased that earlier, sorry, um, didn't apply.
Right. So
You had
I
to
was
go
up.
through a process of, okay, how is this
How
working? How does this
do I
work?
say it? Can I be? I was up Shit's Creek without a paddle. But Jean came and helped me out because I was writing at a shadow color for this, and I had to get this house. And she said, "How about adding some black into it?" I said, "Black? But you can't just add black. It's got to be a color." And the black, I freaked out. I can't do that. And then she left, and I tried it, and it worked. It was exactly the right goddamn color. And so it was incredible. But you see, I reacted, no, you can't do that. And then I did it. Oh, it's right. Holy crap.
So Keith, that was the first time in 41 years I got to have a say on color.
But I mean, I look at you said. I mean, I keep learning. What the hell? I only had 6 months of art school. I'm trying to catch up. You know what I'm saying? It's like I think
Yeah.
by the virtue of the fact that I had so little formal art education, is that I think if you have too much formal art education, you probably may. I don't know. I'm guessing may think you got it all. You know it all, kind of. But if you have none, then you got to keep trying to figure it out every day. You know, sort of thing. And I like that.
That's also
That's the
that
thrill
goes
of it,
back
though.
into
The what?
yeah, and that goes back to, you know, you keep that ego in check of saying there is stuff that I can learn, and it goes to, you know, even the process that
You,
the title of the show, trying to get it right.
right. You got
You know,
20 lifetimes. You never get it right. I mean, really, I don't think. You know, it's like it's a constantly growing, evolving, developing thing.
Well, Keith, let me ask you a question. As an artist, as a graphic designer, okay, how many days in your life can you name that you didn't make a mistake?
yeah, none.
I can't. I've been in business 41 years, and I can't think of one day I didn't make at least one mistake
Well, you
that
have
I
to,
learned from.
but you have to do that in order to know what's right. I mean, you have to have failures in order to know what success is. All that.
But to tie this back into the conversation we were having, though, I think, like, okay, you're very fortunate, uh, in the sense that you've been able to have such a long career. Now, you have been proactive, and obviously Gene has been very proactive, but your style has been able to remain relevant because you're willing to look at what's going on in the world
Yeah,
and take from it what's happening and
yeah,
and adapt it to you and adapt it to your style. I mean, there's no mistake in Hildebrandt, you know, going on, but you're able to exist in the modern art world, and where I think we've seen a lot of guys, uh, that would be your contemporaries or even a lot into the generations below, end up falling off the map because they can't adapt. They can't see what's new out there, and they just go into that such a single-minded view of what they do that they become irrelevant.
yeah. Okay, Keith, can I add to what you just said? Sort of like another.
Please do.
You said they
Please
can't
do.
adapt. I say they choose not to adapt. You certainly are capable of adapting.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like you make your decision. You make it. It's a choice you make. So they made and I remember meeting a lot of the guys in the comics. You know what I mean? Not to mention they were great artists in their day, fantastic. But they would say they would look at new style of artists coming, new guys coming up, and look at it. What's this? The flavor of the week? Really cynically putting it down. You
Yeah.
know, and that's tragic because I mean, what happened to them? They disappeared. They just
Because
refused.
it will evolve. It will evolve when the younger generations connect with something. That is where it directs the tides.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely. And I'm right there. I mean, I'm never. I may be 82, but I don't think. I know goddamn well I don't act or think like 82. That what people imagine 82-year-olds think and act like. I
Yeah.
sure as shit don't. Let's put it that way.
You know, Keith, I think one of the keys is the value, the long term value of something is it good? Is it good? If it's good, it's going to last. I mean, nothing makes me happier personally than when I meet a 25-year-old who listens to Frank Sinatra as well as Lady Gaga.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, I mean, good lasts.
Absolutely.
It's that simple. And if you put time and work and knowledge and energy and love into the creation of something, I don't care if it's a sculpture, if it's a painting, if it's music, it doesn't matter. It will
Oh, yeah.
last. Now, it may not, not everything's going to last on the same level. Greg Hildebrandt's never going to be on the level of Michelangelo. Okay, but
I don't want to
Greg
go
Hildebrandt
backwards.
has his level. You have yours. I have mine. But if what you do has value, it will last.
I think, yeah, again, coming back to being you have integrity, you have obsession and commitment and love of what you do, and that's where it's all at right there, and what the hell else is there? I mean, other than that. But I mean, yeah, the greats survive in the variety, again, the variety of art that's from the caves in France and in Spain until now is the beauty of it all, is the versatility, and you can admire and respect and love and appreciate all those periods and all those different forms of art, not just pick one or two out and say I'm only going to land there.
Yeah.
I can listen to Louis Armstrong, I can listen to Beethoven, I can listen to Frank Sinatra,
Yes,
Chuck
I
Berry.
agree. I agree with all those, but uh, I will add or rephrase that you have, if you want to continue working, right, which you have,
Yeah.
you have to be able to at least incorporate some of the modern style, or you have to be able to give people what they want to a degree.
Totally.
You know,
I agree with that.
or you're worthless. Because I mean, how many great artists, like you said, that are completely forgotten?
Yeah.
How many people do you know that were the amazing guys from the '60s and '70s and the '80s that work dried up for them because
Yeah.
they were incredible artists, but their work just got dated.
Well, it got dated, right? They refused to move. They refused. They were going to insist on what they had was going to stay on forever and ever and ever, and I'm not going to change that. And
Yeah.
no, I mean, you gotta roll with the times, to a degree, and yet that's not means that you abandon everything from the past. See, it's always
No.
that kind of conversation that exists. It's not like you're abandoning anything from the past and taking on only what's new. It's but you're absorbing the present to become part of, add to what you already know, right? Just to add to what
Yeah.
you already know,
And you try new things.
and you keep trying new things. I mean, but if you're interested in it. But see, a lot of people make the choice not to do that. Like I say, coming back to that thing, I think it's a choice you make. You
Yeah.
want to do that or you don't want to do that. You get lazy. It's kind of laziness, I guess, in a way, right?
Buy your own press notices.
You buy your
I
own
think.
press notices, as Gene just said. People who buy their
What
own
did you say?
press,
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear what you said.
people who buy their own press notices. I'm great. I don't have to do anything else. I'm doing what I'm doing.
Yeah, and I also think it happens in the blink of an eye for some people, in that they they don't they're not a consumer. You know, like artists can be very introverted people.
Well, yeah,
You know, and they stay in their little bubble, and they're oblivious to the world
right.
around them. And then one day they wake up and the world has moved on. And
Sort of like,
so it,
yeah, pick him up.
Yeah.
Yeah, come here. He's keep wanting. It's time for him to eat. Not that we're quitting, but he comes around. He comes around and nags me, Clyde. He comes around and nags me when don't you, buddy? Here.
the
No, yeah,
obligatory Clyde appearance. Yes.
yeah, he's always showing up. What was that? Return to what you just said.
So, but, just saying that, again, just talking about and in the admiration for you to be able to adapt, move on, stay current, but yet true to yourself, to that you've made a, um, for lack of a better word here, a timeless style, right? You know, if you look at some of the stuff you're doing now and you look at Lord of the Rings, it doesn't look the same, but there are notes that are the same.
Yeah.
You know, there are
It,
notes that are the same.
I think
That
a
you
lot.
can tell that it's the same artist,
Yeah.
but that we're seeing an evolution of that artist.
Yeah. But I think the subjects, help you to be choosing, keep leaping out of what you're get known for only, and try different things out that turn you on. Just try that out, try this out. The subject helps you to keep moving and keep the brain operating and moving in different directions. And you're constantly assembling a whole bunch of stuff that you pick up along your path, the journey, the trip, and you just keep picking up stuff and adding it to your overall, you know, backpack that you're carrying with you,
Yeah.
you know. And the thing is, are you interested in that? A lot of people aren't interested in that. They choose. And I admire those artists who specialize and stay in one thing, man. Don't take me wrong. Like Andrew Wyeth. He lived in his neighborhood, in a sense, in the backyard in Chatsford, Maine, and Pennsylvania, and that's what he painted. And
Yeah.
I admire his work to the max. I mean, the fact that he would just stay there and do that. And that's, so I don't, there's no, whatever floats your boat, as an artist. But the thing is about obsession and commitment to it and the love of it.
Yeah.
What it comes down to.
Um, so would you say that, okay, if I sum up what you were saying there, like, uh, would you give that advice to a young artist to, sorry, I'm failing in my words here.
Yeah.
Uh, but okay, if we're giving advice to a young artist
Mhm.
for a lengthy career, right? You're saying, okay, I know you always say don't specialize, be able to do everything, be able to jump from here to here to here, stay grounded in your influences of the past and what you've done, but be willing to take in new experiences and learn and grow to stay with the times.
Absolutely.
Does, does that
That's
make
it.
sense?
That sums it up. Yeah. Don't just do one thing. I mean, I was always like obsessed with. I'd sit and draw my parents live from life, or I'd go over and draw a cartoon, or I'd go and make a miniature. Do be interested. The world is filled, with all kinds of stuff. Just tackle it and go for it. Don't specialize and draw everything and absorb everything. Don't and don't
Yeah.
don't and don't ever lose the other side. I mean, talking to young people again is don't lose heart, and don't just because you think that it's turning out to be a piece of crap. That's just part of the process. That's always going to happen. You're going because you're moving into new territory. As soon as you're exploring, you don't have it down yet, so it's going to be difficult and it's going to look like a mess to you. But just keep on trucking, keep on moving through it, and you'll finally get there. It's like if you put your one foot in front of the other, you finally get across the room. You know, so you stay with it, you finally get it. So don't lose heart in everything, and keep jumping all around though. And I used to live. I got to a place, I think somewhere in the '70s after the rings. I thought, well, maybe I should specialize because that's there was a lot of rhetoric talk like that in New York, a gallery scene that you had to specialize. You had to make a commitment, show that you were committed here. So do 25 of the same subject, And
Yeah.
and I went, maybe that's true. Maybe I should learn it because I'm, I'm all over the place and I'm not getting as good as I could be at any one thing. Well, that's a thought, but I don't agree with it. I abandoned that thought. It's like you're never going to get good enough anyway, in my opinion. So you just keep on trying. I don't care what the hell you do, you're never going to get good enough. I mean,
Yeah.
I mean
You,
that's my feeling. I mean, I'm sure that there are many people who don't feel that way, but I do feel that way. You know.
yeah. I mean, you've certainly within your body of work, uh, could pull multiple collections of individualized themes out,
Mhm.
or the pinup art. You've
Yeah.
got well over 100 pinups that you've done. So at this stage in your career, because you produce, that's the one thing with you produce all the time. You're
Mhm.
always working.
Yep.
There's always something being made, that you're able to have that body of work to now pick, like, okay, I've got this collection, I've got this collection, I've got children's classics illustrated, this this collection.
Yeah,
So
Puppets.
Unicorn Publishing, man, those books that I'm so
it's,
that's one of the high points. So Gene started their publishing company. My God, that was fantastic doing that stuff. But I mean,
and I would love to get into a conversation with you on a future um, live stream, about your illustrated classics.
that's a
So
huge subject. That's a great subject.
I that's one of the things that I would love to see more people become aware of with your work. Now, maybe everybody is aware of it, and I personally feel like they're not aware of it enough. Because
Yeah,
but I would I think that would make a tremendous subject to talk about, and to get into uh, your approach to all that stuff. So if you wouldn't mind it at some point,
well, I think it'd be
I'd
great.
love to get into
I
that.
think it's a great idea. In fact, I mean, why shouldn't we do it next week? Let's
Maybe.
do it next week.
Maybe.
Yeah. Hey, whenever you're
It's
ready,
a
man.
possibility for next week. Let's look at it because I
Okay,
think that.
fantastic.
I mean, you take
And
go on.
no, finish,
No,
please.
you take any one of those books. It's like to me. I mean, you're dealing with. When I did Alice in Wonderland, Gene said we're doing Alice in Wonderland. I said what? I research. We researched it and found out that was what 500 artists had already illustrated, down to Salvador Dali or up to Salvador Dali. It's like, oh my God, how the hell can I do this? This is impossible. I can't take this on. And I literally had a panic attack. I had a full. In fact, interestingly enough, the painting, one of the first paintings I did was Alice falling down the rabbit hole. And
Okay.
I was having this, I had a huge panic attack. I mean, a full flight fight thing where the chemicals released. I freaked out. I had to take a Xanax. I did. I mean,
Oh
I
man,
was
you
nuts.
hold on
Which
to
was
that
then in
thought.
the aftermath, I thought, this is highly appropriate, man. This is perfect. This is freaking Alice in Wonderland falling down the rabbit hole. So then I stuck a picture on the wall of me. She's falling down. You're kind of looking down shot. And I put a
Uh-huh.
painting of me on the wall. I always do my Alfred Hitchcock walk on type thing. And only I'm looking at the kid out of the painting pointing upwards. Like, hey, kids, you're going in the wrong direction.
That's
But
awesome.
we would do that stuff with the classics. Like, oh yeah, another one in Phantom of the Opera. There's a scene in the one of the rooms, in the hall rooms, not the main entrance, but one of the where they got a table all set up, and all the principals are there, and all these carved statues are all around the walls,
That's the great foyer.
and in the great foyer. And way in the corner, I stuck two statues, and I put the Marx Brothers, like the Night at the Opera. Come on. But we would do that kind of fun little stuff like that.
Awesome, man. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that conversation, because there's two of your genres that really, like your dream images have
Yeah.
impacted me, but then your illustrated classics, I think, are it might be the finest samples, examples, whatever you want to say there, of your work. It just
Yeah, I have.
you nailed it across the board on those things.
Well, I thanks,
Nailed
thanks a lot, man. I appreciate that very much. The thing is, I just loved them. I just jumped into them and just, wow, incredible. You take on stories, like we did, Peter Pan, for God's sakes. I mean, Alice in
it. Yeah.
Wonderland, Dracula. My God, it's like holy mackerel. It was just like it was like the thrill of it. And it had
Yeah.
been, and so many greats had already done this, and so there was that thing in my head to get beyond that and to recognize that and respect that and love it and admire it. But now, okay, now I'm going to do my thing. Sink or swim. I'm going to do my thing.
Sink or swim, man. All right, so we're at 5:15. I think
Yeah, we
it's
went a
about
little
time
long today.
to call it a day. So if the people watching this now and the people that are going to tune in and watch later, if you like what we're doing, please like and subscribe and share and tell everybody about it. We're really trying to get better every day. We're not professionals at this yet, but we're working on it. And if you are so inclined, please go into spiderwebart.com. There you can see all of Greg's art. You can see the classics that we were talking about that's coming up for next week. Really, it's all there on the website. So please check it out and hit those like buttons and subscribe buttons. And Mr. Hildebrandt, it's always a pleasure to talk with you, sir.
Keith,
And I look forward to talking to you again.
same here, man. See you next week.
All right. Yeah. Have a good night, sir. Bye.
Adios.